Y'all know what it is.
Hey everybody, what's up? And welcome back to another exciting episode of Eggs. Today we have a very special guest, Guillaume Wiatr. Guillaume is a business strategy consultant, leadership coach, writer, and artist who's also the founder behind the consulting firm MetaHelm. A former big firm strategy consultant, Guillaume has founded 4 ventures of his own and is a widely sought after coach by senior executives of top tier companies like Alaska Airlines, the Gates Foundation, and Google, not to mention governmental agencies in France and the United States. In his role at MetaHelm, Guillaume and his team guide CEOs, founders, and business owners to align teams and accelerate innovation adoption. One strategy he's championed, so much so in fact that he's literally written the book on it, is the importance of developing a strong strategic narrative that will not just align teams and clients, but will accelerate the adoption of your product and service tenfold and allow you to grow your business twice as quickly. Here for an exciting conversation about the difference between simple storytelling and crafting a narrative for our business, the big thing that entrepreneurs miss when it comes to mobilizing their teams and clients, how to create impact within your company, and so much more. Please join us in giving a warm welcome to our guest, Guillaume Wiatr. Hey there, how are you?
Awesome, guys.
Excellent.
So cool to be here.
Thank you so much for being here and being willing to do the show. We're thrilled to death to have you on.
Well, likewise, I feel very honored, and I'm intimidated almost. I saw you guys were on really cool podcasts, and like you're so I'm humbled. Let's put it this way.
Well, we're thrilled to death to have you, and hopefully, I mean, you didn't seem visually bumped by my butchering of your name, so I appreciate it.
I'm used to it.
That's all right. No, I have a last name that's kind of like that. Eventually just kind of roll with it. Whatever people say, fine. Whatever.
No, you did a great job.
Perfect. Right. Well, thanks so much. Well, so cool. Let's, I guess, start a little bit at the beginning. Talk a little bit about just sort of who you are, your background, where you came from, and how you got into this game.
Well, as you can tell by my accent, I'm from France, and I immigrated here in 2008. I'm based in the Seattle area. My wife is from here, so she dragged me over here across the ocean. I got a one-way ticket to come to Seattle, because I thought I'm going to immigrate here. There's no plan. There was no return back.
Well, that's pretty good. I mean, I would say, pretty hard to leave France and the wine and the food culture and everything. But I mean, you did pick a pretty good city if you had to come over to the States.
I think I did. And I also point that out in my journey, because I think that's been always a mentality I've had, to go one way and not think about necessarily a plan B in everything, in most of the things I do. I came here when I was 35. I had already launched 3 companies. I was established in France, and then I come here and I know no one. My English is kind of so. And I picked the summer of 2008 to come here and look for a great job, as no one.
Perfect timing.
What else happened in 2008?
So for those who remember, it was more like, everybody's scared, like the Great Recession, the companies laying off, and who wants to hire some kind of French consultant for their business? No one. So, but I've always cultivated my creative side, in my life. I've always done that. I've always, as you said in the intro, I'm an artist too. I'm a musician. Visual artist too, and I also have this business background. I majored in finance. I'm really passionate about turning businesses as a force for good, because I always thought that big or large businesses really provide amazing opportunities for people, inside, outside. If you have a great product, you should seek to improve people's life, but also inside. So I'm here in 2008, can't find a job in my field. And I decide, okay, what should I do? I heard about this thing called the American Dream. And I had this picture in mind of, you go knock on doors and soon you'll find some kind of a job, which is what I did. And I found odd job at first. My friends and relatives back in France were like, they could not believe their ears when I was telling them what I was going through here. And they're like, what are you doing there? You should come back. Like, this is not what you're about. And my gut kept telling me no. I really wanted to assimilate, get to know people, the culture, and improve my English and figure out what could be the next chapter for me here in the United States. So eventually I went back to consulting, and it was incredible to see that as I was first of all, I got back as an like an employee kind of job, right? It was not my own business at first. All people wanted to hear about was, how did you weather that tough economic time? Like, how did you survive this? That's all they cared about. They didn't care about my degrees, former experience, because of although I had translated that in English, it didn't make sense for them anyways. Like they're really interested in finding out, like, what did I come to do here, and why did I stick to the plan, and why I thought I could make it here. So
what was that first role that you took on when you got to Seattle? The regular job, what did you do?
Oh, okay. So my very first job was working in Tacoma at a small pharmacy called Ranco's Pharmacy in the Stadium District, and I was their cashier / painter / gardener / janitor / whatever you want. That's my very first assignment.
I spent some time in Tacoma.
You did?
Yeah, I lived on Hilltop, right, looking over the bay. It was great.
So very close, very close. And I always believed in the power of relationships. So I came as a stranger in that store, and I left that store a few weeks or months later as a friend. And so I had really, to me, it was the definition of success is like, can I make a meaningful connection with people here? Can I do something of value for them? Can I help them? Can I improve whatever they're trying to do? So that's my very first thing. And then this first year, I was subbing in a school. I was tutoring in French, and then gardening. Gardening was my thing. So for some reason, that old lady was walking by in front of the pharmacy one day. I was planting stuff in the fall, and she's like, "Oh, I really like what you do. Are you a landscaper?" So I'm not a I am not an official landscaper with a degree and experience. And I look at her and I think I have two ways to answer this question, yes or no. And I said, yes, I'm a landscaper, because that's what I do right now. I am a landscaper. You have to make, you have to make it till fake it till you make it. Yeah. And she's like, great. You know what? I need you to re-landscape my whole yard. And so that paid for my bills for the next 2 months, that job right there. So see kind of using always my entrepreneurial, adventurous, risk taker mentality to make ends meet in the first months that I was here. And then I took on a job at a retail store in the Tacoma Mall, where they were looking for salespeople for the season. And in the first weeks, so it was a Coach store, the brand Coach, the leatherwear.
Mm-hmm.
So here I am selling women's purses. I have no clue. And I just sell. And after a while, the manager came to me like, I looked at your numbers. You're actually number 1 in the district. What do you tell these people? Like, I don't know. I tell them the truth. I listen to them first of all, and then I tell them the truth. So that to answer your question, Michael, that was my first official kind of quote unquote stable, normal, job with a company, was to be a store manager with Coach. And it's been an incredible experience for me to just learn to work with a team in the US here, as you come from a different country.
Well, and I think I wanted to take just a second and sort of recognize. So one of the things I observed, just in hearing your story, I mean, there are a lot of people who, I guess, chase this American dream, right? They come from all over the world. Obviously this country is a melting pot full of people who've come from all over the world to make their way. And I think there's sort of two ways of approaching that. One is I'm going to come and get it, and whatever it is owed to me, and I'm coming to America and I'm going to just take it. And then there's the version of it that you've described, which is you came here, you were humble, you worked hard, you did all the things, right? You did all the things of the American immigrant. And so your story is so cool because, the importance you put on the relationships and being willing to sort of come from a role where you're highly educated and you're doing all this work in France, yet here you are working retail in the States, but that's okay because it's part of the mission. That whole story to me is like, I think sort of reminiscent of what you would think of as the immigrant's tale, but it's a modern version of it, I guess.
It is. It truly is. I probably make it sound as easy to tell now, because I've told this story before many times.
Sure. Well, and you've got a little distance from it now.
But at first I had no clue. I didn't know how to make sense of it. Like I was like, what am I doing here? And my family in France and friends were reinforcing that voice of doubt, because they this image that I was projecting was not at all consistent with what they had known for me. And yet in the United States, no one knew about I could tell them about my background, but for them, they kind of, well, whatever. I didn't register. They knew me for what I was doing here.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the background in France? What did you do there?
Well, in France, professionally, the last gig I had was to run a training and coaching company in Lyon, France. And it was about helping mostly leaders of all sorts of companies in their day-to-day relationships, mostly internally. So it was a lot of conflict resolution, coaching, counseling, helping them make their organizations run more smoothly. A little bit of sales too, sometimes outside facing, but it was more. It was a lot about interpersonal relationships, and the company used to be called Thaïlis.
So is that similar to what you do now, as far as with MetaHelm?
So it's different. There is definitely that component that I bring in. But what I do with MetaHelm, so it's still about leadership, still about growing businesses, but it's more about bringing people together, aligning them. So I guess, yes, in a way, Michael, it's like, aligning people is for sure just a big part of it. But I focus more on the holistic view, the strategy, and the communications that needs to be built to make the company run.
Okay. So you're a store manager at Coach. You've had experience in France with doing what you do at MetaHelm. How did you kind of take that and go and get your first client here in Seattle?
First, I got hired in a consulting firm called People Firm here in Seattle. It was a young firm, probably 30, 40 people. And there was really one thing that I was interested in it was in leveraging my creative ability. So, I've always been interested in graphic design and drawing. And I always thought the way we do traditional consulting is very much about content, but when it comes to convey ideas visually, my take on this is most consultants are really bad at it. Mm-hmm. They suck, to be honest, right? What if I come from this consulting background? What if I learn how to be a better designer? What if I learn how to be a better visual information shaper, say? So I went back to, so in that first job, Michael, I also took some evening classes and went to School of Visual Concepts in Seattle. And I took on pretty much their full entire design UX curriculum there. And I was bringing back that skill set that really helped me differentiate in that consulting firm. So I was instantly staffed on very interesting projects, high visibility projects where they had such complex information that they were kind of lost, and they needed me to come there and help them distill it. And so that's kind of my launch pad to gain confidence too, and to be exposed to the kind of clients I was used to in France, but American version. And really try to innovate there and think, okay, how can we do consulting better? So that was kind of my launch pad. Then I joined another firm called Point B. It's a bigger firm in Seattle, and they actually recruited me. And what they wanted me to do is to rebrand their firm, like visually rebrand it. And I told them, I don't know how to do that. And they said, yeah, but we do like your work. We like we saw your portfolio. We actually like it. And we think that because you understand consultants better than any other agencies we've met, we think you can do it. So I did it 2 years, and I worked really, really hard. And it was it worked okay. I learned so much there. And so after that, I said, okay, I think the project's done. I'm really, frankly, guys, I'm really about my own path here and starting my own business. So I said, is there a chance I could start something within this company? And they said, well, it's not quite the timing. So I said, okay, no problem. I just go on my own. And that was 2017, and I launched MetaHelm. And I launched MetaHelm with a business plan that was not even written down. It was all in my head. I thought, I feel like I can just go into clients and boardrooms, and I can visually represent what these guys talk about live. So I became a graphic facilitator. I would bring this big board with markers, and I would facilitate conversations and illustrating what people would talk about. And people just loved it. They say, wow, this is really cool. We have all on one board, a messy conversation. Now it's all structured and you capture the essential points and we get a better sense of direction. We also feel in our group that more people that were not very vocal, they seem to feel listened to. So could you do that more? So that's how I started MetaHelm.
Huh. Yeah, no, it's really cool. And it's fun hearing you tell your story too. I mean, obviously this creative background is sort of like, I guess, permeates the whole thing, right? I mean, so whether it was gardening or, the way that you were talking to people about their coach purses or the way that you're illustrating conversations, I mean, at its core, this whole thing is about relationships and listening and taking care of people. And it's like, it's sort of the same thing all the way through. So it's really interesting to hear that through line. And it's really interesting too. I mean, one of the big things that you focus on at MetaHelm is this idea of narrative or storytelling, narrative storytelling. And, but what I think is so interesting about that is I think for a lot of business consultants, they approach it from a business standpoint, right? So you're looking at, finance or looking at different, business training that you've received over the years, and you're sort of coaching people up and trying to fill gaps where maybe they're seeing something differently or whatever. But in your case, you're bringing to it or sort of applying this artistic idea or this, creative idea where basically, narrative becomes the leading indicator, like more than it is, about so many other things that you would consider sort of bricks and mortar business foundation stuff. Establishing this narrative early on is, critical. And for me, that seems to be just sort of another manifestation of your creativity.
Yeah. So, okay. So there's many things to unpack here. I think the first thing I'll say is that, yes, I've always thought about businesses as groups of people. First of all, we think about branding, and there's a lot of talks about branding now. It's the kind of the new advertising. There's a lot of conversations about how brand strategy, branding replaces pure advertising. I to be honest, I found branding a little conceptual still. I think people define it very, very differently. There's not a very strong alignment around what it is. And when I hear people say, okay, you need to, if you want to grow your brand, if you want to build your brand, if you want your brand to stand out, I find this, to be honest, a little bit, I don't picture a human being there. So my approach to this is, brand is great, it's important, but first of all, let's talk about people. So I think about companies as groups of people, and very, very simply speaking, what gets people to work together is a common hope. Like even here in this podcast, why are we having this conversation? Why are we spending the time to get together? Because our narrative, our shared narrative, is that we can somehow be better creative people, build better businesses at a high level. Maybe you guys may say this slightly differently, but I'm pretty sure this is kind of our in our Venn diagram here. This is our overlap, right? We're here to talk about these topics. And so the way I define the narrative is a system of stories. First of all, I make a difference between what a story is and a narrative is. And so I use the term narrative as we hear it sometimes when we talk about religion or politics or history, the narrative around this and this and this, the narrative about NFT, the narrative about crypto, the narrative about social issues, the narrative about politics. It's like the sum of the stories you hear. And to me, a company has such a narrative. And when this narrative is off, when it's not recognized, you can throw so many things in a company, it will still won't go very, very well. You can fix it with better processes, you will fix it with better branding, kind of like a wrapper around the thing to make it shiny. If inside the narrative is not well established, aligned with your strategy and shared with people, it's not going to work. It's really not going to work. So that's something I discovered very early on in my career. I also believe that you should not wait to have a clearly defined narrative to go launch your business. I think it's something that you discover over time. Most people will think of a narrative as a static product. It's kind of having the fixed mindset of saying The narrative is a thing that you can write. There is maybe some guidelines around it, and that's it. It's done, and it's not going to change. And I see it completely differently. I come at it with a growth mindset of, hey, maybe today our narrative is this, and maybe tomorrow he has evolved a little bit because our context changes, because we have to adapt. And so when you come at this work with these these different nuances, but very important nuances, what you see is that people will listen more. People will tend to collaborate more. They'll tend to relax about their company and realize that, yeah, they don't have everything figured out yet. And that's okay.
Yeah. One of the things I like about what you just said, so I run an advertising marketing agency myself. Yeah. And one of the things that basically drove me to working on my own versus working for agencies and things as I've done in the past is one of the things that really bothers me about advertising is sort of the manipulation involved in trying to convert somebody or turn somebody into something, right? And so, and it's not to say that it's evil or mean or whatever, right? But this is them trying to, I guess, sort of convince you or trick you into believing what they believe, right? And so one of the things that we do at our agency that's a little different, like we call ourselves a brand relationship consultancy, so I mean, some more parallels here on the relationship stuff. But by looking at people as individuals, then you can sort of share this story and you can market to them and share your story, and maybe it'll resonate, maybe it won't, but it's not on us to really convert them. Right. Yeah. So the idea is that basically we can either align around this narrative or not, and that'll be the difference between you as a customer or not a customer. I'm not trying to trick you or convince you or give you some sort of something, little carrot on a stick to try and get you to come into our client's business or whatever. And so, and I think that that's the difference, right? It is seeing people as people instead of a data point. And so I think that that's a really good observation.
I love what you're saying here, because I think it's, here's a quick anecdote. I teach a class at the University of Washington about strategic narrative, and one of the first questions I ask the students, they're all MBA entrepreneurs. They're here to create a company, and I go, okay, who has heard about the fact that when you launch a company, you have to have a good story? 40 people in front of me, all hands up in the air. Yeah, we've all heard it. Yeah, it's kind of the common assumption. And I go, okay, what's a story for you? Take a moment to write it down, and then we'll share your answers. And most of the time, the majority of them will tell me, when I hear about telling your story, I hear spinning things, lying, manipulation. I hear about the pressure of trying to say something that is not exactly true, that embellishes, your situation. So for some reason, the narrative about storytelling is exactly what you just described.
Yeah. Ryan. Well, and I think that's right too. I mean, even if you look in popular culture today, right? I mean, the way that we talk about the media, or the media narrative, and depending on what channel you watch, you're getting a different narrative, right? And that narrative is made up of all these little news stories, these little things that they're saying over the course of the day that sort of shape like an average of what they're talking about.
Average, exactly. It's a sum.
Yeah. And so same in business, right? I mean, you mentioned, and I saw this in your ebook that you can download at metahelm.com. Mm-hmm. The ebook showed, you've got a little diagram in there that shows the, all the stories inside a business and then this overarching narrative.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really important. And I mean, you just articulated it moments ago, but I mean, just this idea that first of all, that you can have all these many things inside of another thing, I guess think of it as chapters in a book, right?
Yeah.
And so, the book is whatever story you're reading, but that story is made up of these little mini stories throughout. Mm-hmm. And so, so that's part of it. And then the other piece is just this idea that, this narrative can evolve and change with time. I think, especially for young entrepreneurs, I think there's this pressure or this desire that you must have it figured out, right? That you sit and you've committed this business plan to paper, and by God, that's our plan, and we're not going to move from it because this is right. And so, but I think in reality, I mean, if you compare it to any other human thing, I mean, nothing is so finite. Nothing is so perfect, everything requires evolution.
I just can't resist to jump in here. If you're listening to this podcast, let go of that pressure, please, right now. Let's go of that pressure, that voice. I don't know who told you that you have to have your, so-called message perfectly clear. And before you start sharing your, whatever it is, you're on social media, you're sharing what you do or your knowledge. Like, you don't have to do that. Just go ahead and say what you have to say, and you'll figure it out over time. Because what is going to happen is that you're going to leave a trail of say emails or you do videos on, I don't know, Facebook or LinkedIn, wherever it is. And you start looking behind you, and what do you see? you see a path. It's almost like, cow path. You see where you tend to lean and to wander around, and that is where your answer is about where your narrative is. And when you do this, what you're doing is that you're just doing the things authentically. So it becomes really, really powerful if you go at your business with just, this is what I like. This is what I like to say. This is how we work. Say you have a digital, design agency. This is our approach. Like, we believe in XYZ, things in the way we just do that and talk about it later. So,
well, and I would say, I mean, in my own experience, to your point, our agency's evolved, right? And it's funny because the reason our agency is named what it is because 20 years ago or 15 years ago, when I was a young designer, I was working under my name, right? It was just Ryan Rogar, independent graphic designer. That was my name. And I did business like that for a lot of years. And then one day I was just like, God, if I'm ever going to grow this business, I have to sound like I'm in the business. I need to look like the agency, right?
Yeah.
And so it didn't resonate. It wasn't anything special, but now we're called R2. Well, now we just go by R2 only, but we were R2 Media Group back then, right? And it was still just me, and I was still just this, but I had this idea that I must look a certain way if I was to be taken seriously, right? And I think that is, maybe it's a product of this generation. Obviously I can only speak to sort of my age and younger, but and maybe it was like this in the past too, but it seems like for entrepreneurs, and especially in sort of a social media age, we spend so much time looking at everybody else. We see their story on Instagram or whatever, and man, it looks like they've got it all figured out, right? They've got the yacht, they're on the right vacation, they've got the cool car, whatever it is, right? We look at that thing and we go, okay, well, they've got it figured out, right? So what am I doing wrong? Right. And so I'm spending all this time looking at what they're doing, and I'm living their life instead of focusing on what I need to be doing. And I think that creates this concept in people's head that you need to be further, faster, that you need to be somehow, have everything figured out or solved in advance, because look at this guy, he's got it, that's it.
Yeah.
And so when in reality, back to your point, or taking the long road back to your point, was that, for my business, I did a lot of that fake it till you make it when I was young. And then as I've gotten older and older and older, our message has become more and more pure to how I feel about things. Right. Yeah. So now we're this brand relationship agency, and we really focus on, building good quality relationships from top management to end consumer. It's all about how do we make each other feel better, and how do we grow together, and how do we, all this stuff. But when I was younger, it was like, okay, very tactical. Like, you need a logo, I'll build you a logo, whatever, I'll make you a logo, and just, my whole, I guess, ethos is, caught up to what my authentic self was.
Yeah.
And even at that, it's still an evolution, right? I'm still working on it. And how do I articulate it? And how do I do the things that feel right to me? Mm-hmm. But I think my point is that I think a little bit of it anyway requires some age and some growth and sort of some distance, because I think to try and have all this stuff sorted and to have the depth of knowledge that you need at 26 years old or something, I'm just not even sure it really happens that way.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You need to do your work, do what you have to do.
So you've mentioned story and narrative a few times, and I think there's a difference between the two. And I think the way you've defined it in the past is that the story has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and a narrative doesn't. Can you maybe break that down a little more for us? Sure. What's the difference between a story and a narrative?
Yeah, absolutely. The reason why I say has a beginning, a story has a beginning, a middle, and end, it's, you look at every story, that's kind of the archetype. That's how we've learned to tell stories, also craft and construct stories. And you open most, business storytelling books or storytelling books, period, or children's stories. There is a character, there is a backstory, and all of a sudden something happens, and the character gets either good fortune or bad fortune, right? There's trouble. And then the whole thing is about how the character is going to manage that struggle, and then get to success. You look at any movie, that's how it works, and it works every time. it draws us in, right? But the thing it does is that we know that there is a resolution, we know there is a conclusion, and so we can see ourselves in the character a little bit, but we're not in full control of the story. In fact, somebody else has written the story for us. right? So we're not really participants of that. What a narrative does, on the other hand, it has a beginning. There is probably a backstory, and then something happens. Like, if I can talk about Black Lives Matters, and that's those events. There's been many defining events, but one that we just just past the 2-year mark is the assassination of George Floyd, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the defining event. Is the story over? No, we've not come to full circle, full conclusion, but the narrative is full on right now. We keep adding. It's open-ended. We don't know how it's going to end. And because we don't know yet, many people feel compelled to join the movement, put their fingerprints on that narrative, whether they agree or disagree, whatever this might be, whatever form this might take. And so that's a great illustration for what a narrative is. So I just took that example, but now turn to a company. Do you guys know when your businesses are going to close doors and end?
Never.
Hopefully not.
You don't know. I don't know. Maybe some people say, yeah, my business is built designed to last for 2 years, and 2 years I close. Okay, well, that's you've already predicted the story, but who is really so sure, right? You never really know. So a business is based on a narrative, and the narrative is always open-ended. And so if you keep that mindset, what you do is that you will talk to your clients like that. You will talk to your team like that. You will talk to yourself like that. And what you do when you do that is that you give them a role. You give them something to do with your business idea. You can tell them stories because they are from the past. What happened to you? Oh, one day I was working on this project and this happened and this is how we figured it out. And that's my case study. And look, great result and great outcome. We made more money, or whatever this might be. Okay, that's a story. I can tell you many stories like that because we have many case studies and examples. But our narrative here, and our narrative in this company is probably, I'm making up an assumption here. I'm making up something. Our narrative is to turn, I'll tell you mine. My narrative that is completely open-ended is to turn every organization I work with into a source of inspiration. Will I ever be able to fully 100% do that? I don't know. maybe never.
Pretty ambitious.
Pretty ambitious, right? But that's what drives me. That's my mission. But I can articulate many other things around this. That's how I do it, why I do it, who I'm looking for to help me do it. Because hey, guess what? I don't have all the answers. I need help, right? I am excited about it, and a narrative exists because other people are also excited about it. Like in the music industry, Michael, you're probably excited about one thing. I don't know what it is. I haven't asked you. Sure, maybe I should ask you. What are you excited about in your field?
Oh, I love doing audio engineering for live events.
Audio engineering for live events. How many other people are excited about this?
There's probably 10 or 12.
Okay. In the world?
Maybe 1,200.
Yeah, sarcastic.
100. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are interested in live music and in the actual narrow field of actually doing and mixing the audio for them. That's more narrow, but in the live music industry, there's millions.
Okay, so you share that passion for that.
Yeah.
The audio engineering in live events. So you could probably see yourself running into issues or problems you're trying to solve, maybe new challenges you're trying to take on. Can you do all of these yourself? No, you probably need help from others. So that's where the narrative is. So long answer to your simple question, the difference between story and narrative. I hope this shed some light, but
yeah,
so many others.
Your narrative almost sounds like the company's mission statement. That kind of on the same mindset of what that is.
Let's talk about statement. I love that conversation.
Yeah. So like I had a business coach at one point that was trying to help me define my mission statement. And it was the hardest thing in the world to just kind of like figure that out. What am I doing? What's my statement? And I finally came down to create, document, and produce, 3 words. And
perfect. And how much time did that take you?
A long time. It took me a month or 2 to figure out what I want to do, but it kind of encapsulates everything that I want to do. This podcast, I'm creating content, I'm documenting it, and I'm producing it. And that's kind of like how it kind of came to be. And then it works in everything that I do. Like for audio engineering, I record bands, I document the live show, and then I produce it. And it's just, there's so many little niche things that it kind of goes into, and it's broad, and it can go into different aspects. So when I'm doing software engineering right now, I'm creating a product, I'm producing a product, and it works. But your narrative scenario kind of encapsulates the mission statement of a business, and it aligns everyone. That alignment, I think, is the part that matters the most. It's getting everyone on the same page, going down the same road, and getting to the end result.
Yes, I love this. Whatever. Okay, so I love statements and I hate them.
Yeah.
Let me explain. I love statements because, sure, if you have a good statement to describe what your mission is, and you're proud of it, and you're comfortable saying it, first of all, and people can relate to it, that's great. Good for you, right? But spending 2 months on it, I think it's way too long.
It took me that long to define it into 3 words and encapsulate it into something that small. I had like kind of like this, what are they, the diagrams of like, what do I do? How do I do this? Yeah. Trying to put them all into 3 words was tough. And that's what he was trying to get me to accomplish, was to kind of get it into, 10-word sentence or less kind of thing, just this is what I do. This is how I do it.
The problem I see is, I don't want to judge the approach for this person or what you did, but here's what I see from where I am. The problem that I see with, maybe like locking yourself up in a room for a weekend with your team and trying to come up with the best statement, is that it really fails all the time. It fails for several reasons. Very quickly, people feel like it's death by 1,000 paper cut. It's like you're trying to wordsmith something. It doesn't have any more sense after a few hours. So it really takes more time than that. That type of exercise, because obviously I will fall on my sword. I did that type of exercise because I thought it would work, and it did not work. And so for me, finding a mission statement is like it's like coming up with a title for your book. If you write a book, or a title for your podcast, you've been thinking about it. But you can only put a good title once you know what the book is about, once you have a manuscript or at least a draft. Then you can start defining it. But I see too many people going the way around. Like they start a company and they go, what's our mission statement? Okay, maybe it's a draft. So if you know from the get-go that it's going to be a tentative thing, a draft thing, something that's going to evolve, don't spend more than 5 minutes doing that. But you will have a chance to come back at it anytime you want. And maybe that iterative process, that's the kind of the 2 months you described, Michael. You came back at it, kind of thinking about it. And then you went, oh, easy, 3 words, done, boom. That's it.
Well, and that's what I was going to say for Mike. I mean, obviously, he landed on something that was a perfect fit. My guess is if you heard the long form version of his mission statement, it was probably articulating the same idea, right? It became much more succinct, but this was Mike to a core, right? Like, and so I think, in the defense of the business coach or whatever, trying to pull this out of somebody, I think they're trying to get you to open yourself up to an idea or reveal something about your thinking, right? And I think what ends up happening a lot is the same thing that happens in marketing and sort of what we were talking about earlier, which is you end up writing something that's kind of manipulative. You write something in the spirit of checking a box or fitting a whatever vibe you think you need to fit so that you can sell your business, or that kind of thing. Like I think it puts you in a position to sell more than it does to really pull something out of your heart. So for Mike's, it's a perfect fit. I too have done this kind of exercise, and maybe I'm speaking from my own experience or laying myself out there, but in creating that mission statement and that vision statement and trying to check off all these items on a list, I think I came up with something that I like pretty well. But I mean, I wouldn't say it fell out of me, right? Like I don't know that we tapped into the piece of my brain where something truly authentic about me was, and it just sort of was dumped out onto a page that we could then live by. Instead, I think I tried to put together the right way of saying the thing that I was trying to position our business in the way of, right? So I came up with a statement that, put the business, I think, in the light that I wanted, but I don't know if it's as clear and succinct as Mike's, and I don't know if it was truly an authentic thing or if it was more like me wordsmithing ad copy or something. And so that's my problem, I think, with that exercise versus what you're describing in a narrative, which is, looking back at your history and trying to evolve this thing. But I did want to ask you about that narrative thing, the difference between, and I think it's relative to this mission statement talk too. So you're a CEO that came into a company and it's your job to clean up the place and you want to tighten up your mission statement and you want to do all that kind of stuff. Maybe you don't have any relationship to the founder of the company or you're taking over the mantle from somebody or whatever, and now you want to create it in your own vision, versus the entrepreneur who's starting his own business and maybe leading with a passion. Is there some difference or is it maybe easier or more complex or harder to net out this narrative statement if you're maybe not the founder of the product or whatever, versus if you're an entrepreneur starting a business on something you love? Is there an easier way to get to the narrative? And I don't know if that's a very clear question, but trying to understand or trying to articulate the difference between the way that somebody might approach it in a business way versus somebody who's willing to be a little bit more emotional about it.
Okay. Well, I built a system. I have an approach that works for both scenarios, big or small. But obviously, in a large company, you will have to work with more people. So it's going to take more time, more conversations. It's more complex to do, obviously. And the stakes are at the stage maybe higher financially. Whereas if you're just starting on your own or with a smaller team, it's probably, decisions that can be made faster with less people. So I'm just talking practicalities, but the approach is radically the same. It's four key dimensions: your origin, where you come from, your opportunity, what you're shooting for, the perspective that you bring to your business, and then how do you talk about the product, because the company is about a product, and the offer, let's put it this way, because maybe it's a product or a service or a package or whatever you want to call it. One thing I caught in your question is, for someone who's bringing passion and heart to their business, whereas somebody who's taking over a company that has already existed, I think it's worth challenging the assumption that if you start a business on your own, it's all based on passion. I think there are some aspects of your business that you should be passionate about, and there are some aspects of your business that you should be really detached from. And so that's from the get-go. Building a good narrative is also identifying what can you let go of. What is it that you're not going to be so attached to? What happens if your business fails and, well, it's a fault? Sorry. Are you going to die? Are you going to be devastated? Do you have a plan B maybe? Things like that. So bringing also not just passion, but also rationality, reason within the mix. I think that would be a piece of advice I would encourage anyone wanting to build a good narrative. But it's true that very successful founder. I'm thinking about the founder of Zappos. He's at first Zappos was not very successful. I don't know if many people know that, but before he was widely successful and got purchased by Amazon, the company was really struggling, really, really badly. And the founder had some estate, like he had apartments in San Francisco that he bought through the exit of a previous company. I think it was eBay or PayPal. I can't remember. Don't quote me on this. And he went on to sell most of his properties, most of his assets. He was so passionate, right? And that was his own decision. Maybe somebody taking over a company would not have done that. They would have separated their personal assets to the company they're really leading. So he decided to do that. That was his choice, and he decided to really put his success, his life on the line there. And so I think a lot of us think about entrepreneurship this way, but it's a very personal cursor that you're setting, right? So yes, you can bring passion, but up to what point? That's the question there.
Yeah, and because I think of examples like Apple, right, where you've got a Tim Cook style of approach to management and leadership, and then a Steve Jobs version, right? And not to say that they weren't both, very active business people who were running and looking at metrics and doing all this stuff too, but there was an approach that was sort of the pre-Tim Cook era, to Apple, which was a lot of innovation and a lot of, really interesting things. And then when it got to the Tim Cook era, the business grew exponentially. They're making more money, but it's, the changes are much more incremental. There's a lot less, I guess, what you would see as external innovation. I mean, obviously they do some amazing things with processors and, they're doing innovation all the time, but I mean, you're not seeing this dramatic shift from, the Saved by the Bell phone to the, iPhone, like you're not seeing dramatic leaps in technology the way you once did.
Yeah.
And maybe part of that is just life. Like maybe the next transition isn't as big as that one. I don't know. But I guess my point is, I would think that the narrative or the ethos of a guy like a Steve Jobs might be different than that of an analytical guy like a Tim Cook.
For sure.
And not to say that either one is right or wrong, but I'm just curious what you thought about that.
No, I think as you say this, one of the companies I help right now, that's actually a great example. And they brought me on to for their post-COVID phase of growth, right? They want to grow. They want to. It's a nonprofit, and they want to start getting more involved with more unrestricted donors, and so they're wondering, how innovative they should be. They're wondering how, people say disruptive, but we're not going to go into these details right now, but how they should really change the way they operate. And so your narrative is also defined by this. How differently do you want to work in your industry? Are you trying to be completely a challenger to break away from the crowd and really differentiate very strongly? Or do you find that actually being, staying traditional is actually a good thing for you? Many people are very confused with that question. They're at the same time, they put out a marketing that is they're trying to be out there, very forward thinking. They say we're innovative. But if you look at how they operate completely differently, and they don't notice it. That's the thing. Your narrative is very something that is very unconscious. You're not really aware of it, not very easily aware of it. So I think it's setting the right cursor for how innovative. Do you want to change the narrative within your industry? Or do you just want to keep rolling with the current narrative because it's a good enough one? It's great, and that's what you want to do, right? Do you want to be a disruptor, or do you want to be an optimizer? Just bringing incremental adjustment and make it slightly bigger. In the tech industry, everybody wants to be a disruptor. That's the narrative of the tech industry. We all want to be, great disruptors. But I know companies who are not trying to do that. They're just trying to make old technology work. And their business is really good. Their business is growing really, really well, because you'd be surprised how many of our daily life is run by very old, antiquated technology. And they have a very profitable business. They love doing that thing. They're kind of the antique shop of the tech industry, right? Like, maintaining and renovating and remodeling old things that are not going to change anytime soon, large systems, for instance. So you have to be conscious about it. Who do you want to be? Like, what game do you want to play? That's part of the question around building a strategic narrative. In strategic narrative, there was the word strategic. So strategic means it's intentional. You're aware, you're conscious of it. You've explored deeply what this means for you. You've made some good decisions.
So in developing that narrative, do you go to the employees and ask them, or does the CEO just kind of define it and say, this is what we are, jump on?
I don't care about employees.
Okay.
Just kidding.
I was like, this is good. Let's go down this road.
This is going somewhere. This is going to be interesting.
I like this.
No, I mean, I am probably the most inclusive person. I really care about, actually, from the get-go, I define a company as a group. So yes. First of all, I also clarify what my client CEO role should be. I say, okay, what who do you want to be for this company? And I do that before I decide to work with somebody. I do that in my sales process. I assess if there is a fit between their philosophy and my ideology. And I prefer to work with CEOs and leaders who see themselves as a facilitator of the group versus a dictator. That's my preference. And so the facilitator style will be more interested in building a company with empathy and bringing people into the mix, but also they will be cognizant of they're the decision makers, right? They make the final call at the end, and they explain people why they made this call also, and they bring people really into the thought process. So right now, I just started working with 2 new companies, and the first phase is I'm doing interviews. I go listen to people. That's what great leaders do. What do I know? First of all, I'm not an expert in their field. So I'm a total lay person. One company does flavoring and raw material for the food industry. And so I have zero experience in that. So I'm like, I need to learn, right? And I need to listen carefully to everybody's, or at least most stakeholders' point of view. What makes them tick? What's their interests? What are they scared about? What's their vision for success? Things like this. Where do they see themselves in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? So it's about doing this. So one company I did this with at a large scale in the Seattle area is Alaska Airlines. Okay. We actually did this exercise for one of their subsidiaries, Horizon Airline, in 2017. It was a big project. It took us 6 months, but we did this with every single employee.
So Alaska Airlines is one of those airlines that stands out to me as one that I fly, particularly in the Northwest. I've flown to Alaska a few times. One of the things that they do is if you live in Alaska, where they're from, they don't charge you baggage fees, because someplace like when you're flying into Nome, you have to have large bags to be able to get, you go to Home Depot and you fly it in. It's something that people in the lower 48 don't realize, is that there's a necessity for people in Alaska to have an airline like Alaska Airlines. And I was wondering, like, when you brought their name up, what are the differentiators that they do differently from, Southwest or this or that? What stands apart? What's their mission statement? Can you kind of go down their path, what you did for them and how you kind of made their narrative?
Yeah. So first of all, I want to clarify the scope. I worked with Horizon Airlines, which is one, and they actually, when you look at their airplanes, you will barely see any difference. They look the same, but it's like that project's now 4-year old, but at the time it was a separate entity. And Horizon Airlines do actually specializes and focuses on exactly what you described, Michael. Like, being close to people, being more they're kind of, they're flying, delivery truck sometimes, or they pick up and bring kids from school from really remote areas for the weekends and things like that. And so one of the things that the CEO wanted to do is realign where this part of the company was going with their original mission and what was happening in their context. And that's why we listened to every single employees. We brought them in cohorts of 100 people at the time, and I think there was I think the workforce was probably, just for Horizon, was probably close to 3,000 people at the time. And so we did it over 6 months, and we listened to every single person that had a chance to tell a story around a specific topic, and we listened to so many stories that we could really sense and revive what the narrative should be for that part of the organization. So I heard incredible stories, like people going to funerals who just needed silence and didn't want to have service in the flight, and the flight attendant just noticing this and inquiring and just stopping their service just because there's a big a large family taking this airplane, and that's just what they needed. So going out of their way, going outside of their usual process to just cater to those people's needs at the time. So we did this visually. We did this over several days, and then we asked who wanted to raise their hand to drive initiatives that would really revive the soul of this company, and what initiatives, like what concrete initiatives they were interested in driving. So again, building a narrative is an open door. It's an open invitation. We were not there to tell them the story that we had nicely crafted with a marketing agency in closed doors and that they should now follow. That's not our approach at all. It was the opposite. We let them tell us what was right for people out in the field and how we should go about shaping the company then.
I like that.
When you
a really cool process.
When you approach it that way, do you notice any pushback, or do you get any sort of, I guess, leadership involvement where, all the employees seem to think one way, but a strong-headed, leader at the top is going, and they try and muddy it up a little bit because maybe there's a misalignment between leadership and the staff?
Well, okay, so you can only do that if leadership is really on board with the fact that there are some risks. There are people who are going to be excited about this idea and people who are going to be scared. Because also change, is a scary thing. So when you say, when we're going to revive the narrative for this company, we're going to evolve our culture, turning into maybe new habits, new processes, it signals change. And some people say, we don't want that. Where we are is not great, but that's good enough. It's fine. Don't change a thing, right? So you get all sorts of reactions. Again, a company is a group of humans. And so you have to be fully on board with the fact that, you're going to rock the boat a little bit. Yeah, you're going to get some push. You will go get some pushback. So what you have to do then is schedule some timeouts with your leadership team and say, okay, how are we doing on this process? How do you feel like this is going? Should we continue? Should we stop? So continuously re-evaluate this exercise, because you're dealing with human nature, right? You're not dealing just with marketing stuff you write on a piece of paper. It's not a product. Again, it's a process. So you have to, so for sure, leadership has to be completely on board with what's gonna happen. It has to be driven by leadership. Most people, when they hear me describe what I do, they go, "Oh, it's a marketing thing. So the marketing department should be in charge of this." And I say, no, not just marketing. Of course, marketing should be part of it, but everyone else, operations, finance, customer service, product development, and most importantly, the CEO. The CEO should be the person orchestrating this whole thing and really facilitating and making it easy for people to connect together and, with compassion and really get alignment on where this company is going. Marketing is not the sole proprietor of the entire narrative, the way I define it. Sure, marketing may be the sole owner that has the key of the website where the about page with some version of the story is depicted. That's probably the case for most marketing department. Yeah. But how many companies, I go to so many companies where I ask people, okay, so I have 3 simple questions for you. What does this company do? Why is it what do your customers tell you that it's important for them, and why is this so important now in the current context? And I get 1,000 answers, and none of the answers have anything to do with what's on the website. Who cares about the website? I go, well, marketing put that, but that's not us. That's their branding. That's the mission statement. That's not what we do here. Yeah. How many companies fall into this trap, right? So if you want to avoid this trap, of course, it's a leadership thing. This is my line to sum it up. A story is thought as an act of literature. A narrative, a strategic narrative, is an act of leadership. It's not an act of literature. And many people will tell me, I can't do your thing because I'm not a good writer. I don't care if you're a good writer. Are you a leader? Yeah. Okay, you can do it.
I love that. Well, and what a great way to put a button on this conversation too. I don't know if you can believe it, but we're already an hour into this thing. So,
oh my gosh.
So we will we'll start to wrap it up here. Do you want to give people just a little bit of information where they can track you down if they choose to engage with you online, and where they can find you?
Okay, so there are many ways to track me down. I'll start with the most simple. If you go to your web browser and type in strategicnarrative.com, you land on my website. But you will find me very active on LinkedIn. Connect with me. I'm always there, responding, commenting. I'm also on YouTube. I post a new video, my daily insight, almost every business days. And if you're really excited about this topic, I published almost 7 days a week on my email list. So these are full options. And I'll add one thing that I rarely say, but if you want me to, if you want to know more, give me a call or send me an email. I'd love to come and speak, at your company or speak at your organization or your school or your community about this topic.
Yeah, I also just wanted to mention, or I happen to know that you just released the free ebook, Strategic Narrative. There's also a fun little video version of it where you actually read the book for people, so you can digest it however you like. A lot of the stuff that we talked about in the show today, not to mention a million things that we didn't get to, will be found in there. So go check that out. That's just over at metahelm.com. And that's great. So thanks so much for doing this. We really appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Quick question. Do we have some kind of cool music to end this?
Well, we're happy to plug something in. We have some kind of coolish music that we use most of the time, but we're happy to plug something in for you.
That sounds great. Take care, guys.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. And thanks to everybody who tunes into the show this week and every week. And see you guys next time.